was an interesting time in both the country and the city. In the country, we'd awoken to the needs for civil rights.
A time of a lot of progressive political activity.
Law firms would get a passing grade, it seems to me, but not much more than a passing grade in how much they did in terms of serving the public interest.
And I think that's what gave rise to the idea that there ought to be a public interest law firm.
And the idea of the people who came together to found New York Lawyers for the Public Interest was to carry forward with the spirit of the 60s, the spirit of Johnson, the needs in the country and in the city.
New York Lawyers for the Public Interest is an incredible partnership between the private bar and community groups across the city. We work in 3 areas: disability rights, environmental justice, and health justice.
I'm so proud of our community lawyering model and the way in which we work democratically in partnership with community organizations. We want to let communities provide leadership to us. We know that oftentimes a community's problems have to be addressed by public education and outreach campaigns, or by lobbying public officials, or by conducting a series of right-to-know workshops. We're prepared to do whatever it takes. 2011 was a remarkable year. We had 3 huge statewide victories, 1 in each of our program areas.
NYLPI was part of a coalition that helped to strengthen the New York State language access regulations.
I think a very common story is the situation where parents have to take their children out of school to be able to serve as interpreters at hospitals. Often hearing awful things that children would have to tell their parents that they, been diagnosed with cancer. So we worked with hospitals to actually get them to be able to provide professional interpreters that can handle that job and keep children out of the equation.
Providing interpreters within 10 minutes in the emergency room and translating vital documents like consent forms. We started working with Governor Cuomo to advocate for him to advance an executive order that would give leadership and facilitate state agencies following federal requirements to make their services accessible to people who don't speak English well. Just a month ago, Governor Cuomo and the Blue Room signed an executive order that was really quite sweeping. All executive agencies that have contact with the public are now required to provide interpretation services, have language access plans, have language access coordinators. My real hope is that this will be a model for other states and other jurisdictions to follow moving forward so that they too can realize the benefits of having diversity and being welcoming of that instead of oppositional to it.
The Joseph S. case was an amazing victory we had this past year. It's an example of the kind of power a small civil rights group can have when it partners with a law firm like Schiff Hardin.
The Joseph S. case is a case that we brought following an investigation conducted by the New York Times that revealed that scores of low-income New Yorkers with mental illness were being discharged from New York State psychiatric hospitals into nursing homes. Following those series of articles, NYLPI, along with community leaders in the disability rights community, conducted our investigations, which confirmed that scores of individuals were in fact being warehoused inappropriately in nursing homes. Oftentimes they were being confined in lockdown conditions with very little mobility and freedom as to their daily activities. So we brought this case in early 2006 against New York State. After several years of intense litigation, this past fall, on the eve of trial, we were able to reach a healthy settlement with New York State. It requires New York State to establish a screening process that aligns with federal requirements to make sure that these individuals are given proper assessment for their ability to function in the community.
One of the things that NYLPI really brought to the litigation was they knew the law and they knew the immense bureaucracy that New York State employed for handling persons with mental illness. That kind of information and knowledge is very hard to assemble, and having that expertise was really helpful. I mean, it was a great working relationship.
It's so great that there's an organization and people that could give you a hand in a needed situation like in my case.
We are really just blessed and very thankful that you guys came through and you helped us, like without anything back.
A major victory from 2011 involved the siting of power plants and the passage of landmark legislation, the first of its kind in the whole country, that allows low-income communities and communities of color to have a voice in the process of siting plants.
Article 10 reflects a lot of what lies at the core both of NYLPI's mission and at the core of the EJ program's work. This is a state law that deals with the way that major power plants get sited in New York City. So everything from natural gas plants to wind farms, if they're of a significant size, go through the Article 10 process. It provides certain protections to local community groups that you wouldn't find in the typical environmental review process, and includes a couple of really important substantive protections for overburdened communities, which means that communities that bear a disproportionate share of air emissions or other emissions get added protections.
On multiple levels, this is groundbreaking. On one, it's the first time in New York State that there's any real analysis of what constitutes an environmentally overburdened community, which is the heart of environmental justice. One would think that that's the kind of policy initiative that we should have won years ago, but it just goes to show you how difficult and long-standing some of these challenges are. You know, a hard-fought victory like this has its roots about 15, 16 years ago. The challenges in a 21st century are increasingly complicated, and it's that complexity that continues to mean that the resources of New York lawyers is needed more than ever.
I remember, when Dan and I were first sitting in a little room with Cy Vance talking about New York Lawyers for the Public Interest and what we hoped it might accomplish someday, and I don't think any of us imagined that 35 years from that day in 1977, it would still be around and it would be still accomplishing the important things that we hoped it would.
I think both Joan and Michael, and with support of the board and a really talented staff, have developed in ways that, frankly, I don't think I could have imagined.
There are plenty of organizations that do substantive work, and many of them do it very well. New York Lawyers for the Public Interest does the substantive work very well, but it also continues to serve the clearinghouse role.
People will know that this is the place to come. This is where the expertise is, and this is where you will get tremendous assistance to address the issues in your community. Very often when I talk about what New York Lawyers does, my kind of short way of saying it is, they really just do what's right.
The future of New York Lawyers is to build on our strengths in the areas of environmental justice, in the language access area, in health justice, disability rights. These are very specific areas where New York Lawyers has really developed an expertise, a national expertise. My parents didn't speak English and had to face medical issues and medical decisions, and the best that they could get in terms of translation was from their son, who was 7 or 8 years old. These are issues that very often are not glamorous issues, and very often are issues that people don't want to hear about because it's not affecting them.
It's certainly one of the few things I'm most proud of in my now more than 40-year-long professional career. And it's a spectacularly successful organization, and while it's adapted to changing needs and changing times, it's continued to pursue the original goals, which I think are very important.
Well, I don't know. I mean, 35 years, it's got to last another 35 years.